Okay guys, we are back working on the Iron 6 this episode. You guys know that I stepped away from it for a little while. This driver's side frame rail was sitting high. I was like, you know what, I'm going to develop a plan, walk away from it. And I've got a plan, and I now have a very good tool to help me analyze this.
Hey, is this the Iron 6 project that I've heard so much about?
That's right guys, I am incredibly fortunate enough to have the help of Barry himself from Joe Daddy's Garage. Things worked out perfectly. He happened to be passing through the area and he offered to stop by and take a look at the car, and to my surprise, he's actually even willing to bust out the tools and do some work on it. So, very fortunate day for me. So without further ado, why don't we jump into it and you can give us your assessment on this thing.
Sounds good. Okay, so looking over the car and realizing there's a height difference between these two frame rails, I noticed when this car, you know, we talked about it where it was hit on this side. And I pointed out to Andrew that, you know, all of this bracing in here that's bent, it's out of shape because of the impact that was on the wheelhouse and the quarter. I think that is affecting the frame rail. Now the height difference could be 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. Something is off to where this one is sitting high. As I was looking at it, and I could see how out of shape this piece is, I'm thinking that this piece is actually helping pull it up a little bit. You know, whenever everything was on the car, things stayed in place because of spot welds and metal. Well, when you start taking stuff away, things can spring and get out of place. So I'm thinking there was tension on this, and by removing all that metal, it sprung up and just wasn't noticed until he started really getting out the level to see what was going on. So the plan now, we're going to experiment a little bit. I want to put some tape on the frame rail and tape on the floor and take some measurements. So we can then do some work up here, and we want to cut this loose and see what happens to it. So that if we can push this rail down, take this piece, get it straightened out, get it back into shape, get the measurements close, but you can push this down and weld this back in, and that may help with the angle of the frame rail, hopefully. Now, there's other ways you could do this as well. Even without this piece, you might be able to put some blocking in here to help push that down. You might be able to put some weight back here to help push it down, hold it into place until you get something else in place up here to keep it from moving. Oh, did you hear that pop?
Yeah, I did.
You heard that?
Yeah.
All right. That may very well tell me that there was a lot of tension on that thing, because normally when something pops, you hear that pop. You hear, you know there's something pushing or pulling on it. So that's a good sign, actually. We can almost look, trying to see if I can witness where that spot weld, what's left of it.
I can't tell if it went down or if it popped up.
This kind of came, I think it came down. But regardless, still need to get this out so that this can be hammered straight.
Okay.
So let me see if I can get some of these others out.
I think you need your own film crew is what you need.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I was gonna buy you one of these things. This doesn't hold an edge.
No, it's not the strongest steel. Might be.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Might.
See, when I drill these, I take that drill in a big circle, and then it breaks the surface, makes it weak. So like this one already popped. That one did. Now this one might. Let me see if I can get a little more. Past that. There we go.
There she is. You got
All right.
pretty dinged up.
Here you go. I'll hand that to you.
All right. Put that in the work on later pile.
All right, so now that frame is the rail is easier to move, my thoughts are put some weight on that, push it down, try to get it into the proper location, and then take that piece that we just removed and either put in a new piece or straighten out that piece. And while you have that down, weld that back in. Help this get back into what would be the normal position. At this point, with the history of the car, we really don't know what transpired, what is pushed out of place and what's not. But we do know we can manipulate what we have. So that's my thought. Once you get that pushed down, and even if you have to come back in and add something in here to help it stay in that position until you get everything else back in place, that may be what we have to do. But at this point, we know when that weld broke loose, it definitely had tension on it. So something has sprung.
And for curiosity's sake, the fact that this is sitting 3/4 of an inch high,
Right.
how big of a deal is that for the overall ride height of the car, the way it handles, and then sheet metal alignment and stuff? Like, is it that big of a deal if I can't get it back exactly?
I would not sweat it.
Okay.
Because you've got, the only thing that's going to come into play is the location of the spring shackle, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the one thing that's going to be changed by it sitting a little bit higher. But if you have it close to the position it needs to be, you're never going to notice.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never see it. It's not like it's not like the, high-end supercars that go down the road that have to be zero tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
These cars weren't that tight to begin with. They had all kinds of gaps and spaces and offset things. But that is probably going to be fine once you get it down and get it close to where it needs to be.
What would you call close? Within 1/8 of an inch, or?
On this,
Yeah.
3/16,
Okay.
somewhere in that ballpark is probably going to be close enough. If you're within 1/4, maybe what you have to live with. Because you don't want to have to cut that frame rail out.
Yeah.
That's a solid rail.
Uh-huh.
And I think that would be a bad idea.
And you've looked down along here, and there isn't anything indicating that there's an obvious reason for it to be lifted.
No, we looked at it a little bit earlier, and we see a little bit of creasing up here, but that is more like from the stamping whenever they made these at the factory, because they were just pressed. It's not like a hydroform piece. It's just a die that it gets pressed over.
Yep.
So when the metal moves or gets put together, it has to go somewhere. It has to collapse or shape in that process. And that's all I think this is. These are just witness marks of that action.
Which that's the same feedback I got from Harvey Redmond.
Right.
So that's consistent. Okay, so keeping that in mind, we know that there was damage over there, and then if you remember, I pulled off the huge hunk of Bondo. So some of the things you noticed over here going on are...
Was that your intro?
Yeah, that was my intro.
Were you actually talking?
Why don't you tell us what you've observed?
Were you filming that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, because your camera was all over the place while you're talking. Okay, so when Andrew and I were looking this car over, he wanted some opinion as to what could or could be wrong, could be wrong, could be right with this. Let me start that over.
Okay, so that was your intro.
Yeah. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, so as I was looking this car over with Andrew, he was curious if I noticed anything that was out of place or didn't look right, something that may help him clue into what the car may need. Now, I've been doing cars for a long time. I've been doing Mustangs, and I'm used to looking at certain parts of the car and identifying what shape it should be or what may be out of place. So we were looking this over, and I was looking at the transition of the roof line into the quarter panel, and also the quarter as it met the deck filler panel. And one thing that stood out real quick to me was there's some paint missing right here on this corner. We know that this quarter was hit on this side. As Andrew pointed out in one of his other videos, there was like an inch of Bondo on this quarter panel. And he's taken all that off. Well, what that really tells me is this car had some sort of impact on this side of the car. Now, if you look up here, you see that what looks like paint missing. You can also see an offset between the top of the quarter panel and the top of the deck filler panel. You can also see a separation of seam sealer here at the corner. So what that tells me is when this car was hit, this quarter panel flexed. It pushed over and caused this to bow or buckle because this isn't going anywhere. When you're going against a corner like this can give somewhat, but this isn't going to give right here. So in my opinion, this quarter has flexed and caused this to be a high point. So this will have to be massaged down. You can actually feel it when you run your hand across it as well. So this will have to be massaged down to try to make this transition look better. And I know that Andrew had said he's going to possibly replace this quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably go ahead and do that. So you know that once you do that, you can get this out of the way and get rid of this junk that's causing this problem. But anyway, little things like that can help you identify what has happened to the car possibly. So just an observation.
All right, so the plan moving forward for me then needs to be straighten out the piece that we removed and put some weight or leverage on this thing, force it back into place, try to get it within 1/8 or 3/16 of an inch. And in doing that, weld that piece back in and hopefully it can hold until I can get the rest of the work done and weld everything in place. And that procedure should be okay for this type of car.
Yep.
Awesome.
I believe so.
All right. Barry, I appreciate it greatly having you stop in. It was
Certainly.
a pleasure finally getting to meet you and shake your hand.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to jump back into this. You've rejuvenated my motivation for the rear frame rail.
Awesome.
So
good to hear you.
all right, guys, that is everything I have for this episode. So until the next episode, stay driven.
Take care of yourselves. See you.